Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us, a brand new guest. He's been on the internet forever. I've been a big fan of his work, and I am remiss to say I haven't booked him until now. I guess an embarrassment of bookings or whatever. Fantastic guest, one of the top financial websites in the world. I'm talking about Mike Shedlock. He goes by the name of Mish, M-I-S-H, Mike Shedlock of MishTalk.com. Mike, good to have you on USAWatchdog.com.
Pleasure to be on the show, Greg. What took you so long?
I called you back in, I was looking at my email string going, I contacted you back in December. I'm like, I need to have this guy on. Anyway, you're on now, and I'm hoping you'll be coming back as a bit of a regular guest in the future. But I want to talk, let's start with the stock market. A cuckoo time, record high after record high. Actually, my friend Greg Manarino, after the Janet Yellen turnaround, I think interest rates are about where they need to be. He said it's going to go record high, record high. What's your take on the stock market? Is it a blow off top, or is it the real deal?
Well, we all know this is a bubble. Anyone who's thinking rationally knows this is a bubble. John Hussman put out an excellent chart the other day. I hope you can work a chart into these videos. If not, we'll provide a link to my website. But on a median PE basis and on an immediate earnings basis, the stock market is at an all-time high. All-time high now. Exceeds the bubble, the dot-com bubble, exceeds the housing bubble, exceeds 1929. Only the top 10% does not exceed the dot-com mania that we had in 2000. And, we know, these bubbles have to correct. The question is when. The bigger they get, Greg, the bigger the collapse, the more pain is going to be felt.
I'm looking at some charts, and I know you've seen this, where they draw a line between the big downturn in 2000 and then 2008. And if you just draw it down, it looks like it's going to hit 5,000 land on the Dow. Well, what do you think about how low this thing could go?
I don't know how low. I'm not a outright hardcore deflationist, as say someone is like Robert Prechter. He's had those predictions out there that the Dow was going to fall to 600 or whatever. I don't believe that. I don't think it's going to get that low. In fact, I don't even know if we have a crash per se. One of the things that's a likely scenario in my mind, Greg, is the stock market falls 10 or 15% this year, falls another 5% next year, rallies a few percent, drops another 10%, rallies 5, drops 15. No crash in there, not even a correction on a year-to-year basis of 20%. But all of a sudden, investors are going to wake up, look at the portfolio, and say, my God, I'm down 50%. That's the kind of thing that I think is going to happen. That's what played out in Japan. Well, just pull up a chart of the Nikkei. They've had about 650 or 100% rallies in the last 30 years, and the stock market is still 40% of the level it was in the 1980s. Quite amazing. Why can't that happen here? More importantly, why shouldn't that happen here, Greg?
Well, what about Jeff Gundlach talking about he's going to make 400%? I mean, that's the thing. I'm going to make 400% on my shorts. I'll be sad, he says, if he doesn't make 400%. He's a big-time investor. I mean, I'm sure he's using leverage, derivatives, whatever, but he's betting big that we're going to get a big sell-off. What do you think?
Greg, to get 400% shorting, the most a stock can go is to zero. So you can make 100%. I don't know how he's counting percentages here, but if a stock goes to zero, I don't know how you calculate percentages. This is where we're getting into some screwy math because you run into some zero divide issues. But to get 400%, you have to be using leverage. You can do it, but your timing better be right. There were a lot of people in the housing bubble, Greg, that went bust. They knew what were happening, or they thought they knew what were going to happen. They were actually right about what were happening, but they were a little early or a little late, or they used so much leverage they got forced out of the trade in the bear market rallies. What tends to happen in bear markets is that everyone loses except those that sat it out.
Oh, well, you brought that up, and I want you to bring that up. I'm glad you brought that up because, I know you cover the economy. You write 2, 3, 4, 5 articles a day. Prolific writer. Bravo. That's not easy to do for anybody who thinks that anybody could just pump that out. No, because you got to source it and do all this other stuff. I digress. But I know you know about this. Alan Greenspan, he comes on Bloomberg, and the stock market is in a bubble. Excuse me, the bond market's in a bubble. Then he says, well, stocks are okay. Then later on CNBC he says, so the bond market's in a bubble, and if we have rapidly rising interest rates, I'm paraphrasing, stock's going to take a hit too. What do you think about Greenspan's warning about the bubble in the bond market? I mean, he's 91. He doesn't care. Whether he's long, whether he makes $1 million, he's 91. He doesn't care. I mean, a legitimate warning, right? We have a bubble in the bond market. What say you?
Greenspan's an interesting case, a real interesting case. When people believe Greenspan, he's typically wrong. When he comes out and makes a point, like, for example, Greenspan was one of the biggest free trade advocates ever. I'm a big free trade advocate. I'm assuming you're a big free trade advocate. But people hold that against him. They think he's wrong about free trade. Now he comes out and he says there's a big bond market bubble. Oh my God, bond market bubble. Greenspan's right again. Well, no, Greenspan's wrong. Well, actually, he's correct in that there's a bond market bubble, Greg, but he's looking in the wrong place. He's looking at U.S. Treasuries. I posted a chart on my blog. You got to get this chart out there. It showed junk bond yields. And junk bond yields in Europe are at record lows. In the United States, they're at near record lows. You have the average junk bond in Europe, this is amazing, trading at a less yield than AAA corporations here in the United States. Now, that's a bubble, but it ain't the bubble that he mentioned. He's talking about a bubble in U.S. Treasuries. What I think is going to happen is when the junk bond bubble busts, we're going to see even lower yields in Treasuries. So in other words, Greenspan's wrong. The weird thing is he's widely believed. Everyone's, oh my God, there's a bond bubble. Well, there is, but it's not the one he's looking at, Greg. And then he said in January, there is no stock market bubble. Again, that's widely believed. So the thing with Greenspan is, if he's widely believed, he's one of the biggest contrarian indicators in history. Amazing track record of being wrong when he's believed.
What about the corporate bond bubble? Let's say the corporate bonds, they get caught with this. They get, we were talking about, debt that's priced so low that, a 0.5% or 1% or 2% destroys it. What happens if this bond bubble in junk bonds busts? Can it take the whole system down?
Absolutely. And in fact, it is likely the junk bond market is propping up the equity market. If we go back to what happened in 2009, you had corporations, a lot of legitimate corporations that even couldn't get funding. Their share prices were plunging. They couldn't get funding. Now everything can get funding. And we're seeing the reverse effect. This is one of the things, actually, that Bernanke did. He revived the stock market, the bond market, but they wouldn't let it go. They kept it up with round after round of QE, inflated these things, beyond belief, didn't know where to stop. And of course, they caused these bubbles in the first place by keeping interest rates too low too long, following the dot-com crash in 2000, 2001. We replaced that with a housing bubble, and now we've replaced the housing bubble after that crash with an everything bubble. About the only thing that's not in a bubble right now that I can find is gold and gold miners. Everything else is in a bubble, and because of the reaction, the Fed's likely to cut interest rates again when the economy goes into recession. It's been about 9 years since we've had one. Very long in the tooth. The Fed is very late in hiking. I don't know what throws this over. I don't know what drives this thing over the hill. Perhaps it's just exhaustion, Greg. And when it comes to exhaustion, think about the housing bubble. In 2006, we went from people standing overnight in lines in Florida, not to get a condo, but for the right to enter a lottery to buy a condo. Amazing. Guess what? 1 week later, the lines were gone. No one wanted the things. I think we're going to have some sort of moment like that where people are just going to realize, my God, what a bubble. I need to cash out. And of course, everyone can't cash out at the same time. And this is what we're going to see. But like I said, that's the crash scenario. But the alternative to that is it just drags on for years, which is actually my favorite scenario, like what Japan did. Either way, people who are buying stocks at these prices are playing the greater fool's game. They're focusing on the ability that they can unload this to someone who's more stupid than they are. Amazing.
So one of your scenarios is to go on and drag on and on, but another one is this thing could get terminal in a hurry if the corporate bond, the junk bond market blows up. Or what about some problem in Washington not raising the debt ceiling? I mean, Steve Mnuchin is like, hey y'all, you need to raise the debt ceiling. Hey, you need to do it now. Hey, you need to raise the debt ceiling. I mean, what about a fight in Washington where even the president's own party, for whatever reason, doesn't raise the debt ceiling?
They always capitulate, Greg. Look, they did it under Obama. They came up with this with a sequester. They agreed to put in these cuts. Guess what? Both sides got together. They took out the defense cuts. They took out the other cuts. There were no cuts. Do you have any faith in this Congress is actually going to cut the budget? I don't. So it's all a game they're playing. And then, of course, the party in power, and this time it's the Republicans. Now we got a Republican president here who wants to raise the debt ceiling. And so this charade, when does it stop? And it's very annoying. We need more politicians like Rand Paul who really want to do something about the deficit, about the debt. Otherwise, it's just talk.
Fly in the ointment, another, I guess a gray swan, because if you can know what they are, it's not such a black swan, but a gray swan. North Korea, Japan was worried about them having a nuke, and now the United States says, you don't know what is disinformation, what is propaganda, what is the war hawks. I don't know. Maybe it's real. I mean, his quotes about wanting to destroy the United States are real. So now we find out that North Korea, supposedly, the U.S. has confirmed this, that they have a nuclear, nukes they can put on a warhead. So what about now we have sanctions against North Korea, which a lot of people, that just kind of flew under the radar. Yes, a big win for the Trump administration. They got sanctions on the North Koreans. Will China and Russia, who border North Korea, enforce those sanctions? I don't know. What about a North Korean type blow up that we wake up one morning and the United States has attacked North Korea, or vice versa?
Very possible and very frightening, actually. Let's hope that this is all just posturing by North Korea, because if they really do something, they're going to be blown off the map. And the problem with being blown off the map, or even a preemptive strike, let's say, they're going to know that these missiles are fired. And it won't take much for North Korea to, they're not going to retaliate against the United States per se, but South Korea, Seoul is right there. So if they retaliate, or even if something goes wrong with a U.S. strike, even if we take them out, what kind of fallout is there going to be over South Korea? A lot of businesses there, a lot of people there. There's no easy solution here. I'm in favor, actually, of opening up negotiations with them, because, we need to avoid war here. But if he starts something, he's going to be annihilated. I don't think the stock market's going to react very prettily, very nicely if a nuclear war starts in that region.
I mean, I think
that is indeed a wild card, Greg.
I think they would go after every submarine they have. I mean, North Korea's parking them 100 miles off our coast. I mean, or something. I mean, they're not that stupid. If they want to attack us, they got nuclear submarines. But I don't want any of that. I mean, I think it's crazy, but it is a possibility. And then all the other war cards in in Eastern Europe, and we have the Middle East is basically a simmering, boiling pot of who knows what could happen. War or a regional war or a wider war happening, is that in your playbook? Are you worried about that when you're writing financial analysis?
Very much so. And one of the reasons why I could not support Hillary is, well, many thousands of reasons, actually. But I thought she was a bigger warmonger than Trump. Her and McCain, as far as I'm concerned, were the two biggest supporters of war. Any war, no matter where it is, McCain was for it. Hillary was for it. She bragged about what she did in Libya, and look at what a basket case we made Libya out to be. U.S. interference in Iraq, look at what we did there. We're still in Afghanistan. Why are we still in Afghanistan? What do we hope to get out of Afghanistan? What did we get out of Iraq? One of the reasons why countries want to protect themselves from us is because of U.S. policy. We overthrew a democratically elected or an elected, whatever. We overthrew the Shah of Iran. The consequences over the years, why should Iran trust us? Why should they trust us? Maybe we shouldn't trust them, but we need to look at both sides of the coin. And when it comes to these kinds of things, my general idea here, Greg, is we should stop meddling. When have we ever gone on a campaign of nation building, replacing a dictator with someone else, that it's ever worked? And people are proposing it again. They want us to do something about Venezuela. Why don't we just let it alone? The U.S. created ISIS. Even Tony Blair, former UK Prime Minister, admits that our actions in Iraq led to the creation.
And we armed them. I mean, that's obvious. We armed them. We armed ISIS. The U.S. armed ISIS. And Saudi Arabia and other people, they armed them. I mean, that's
we continue to do so. And McCain wants to send weapons over there to the what do they call these? The moderate Al Qaeda rebels. They're like they're wearing a hat. I'm a moderate Al Qaeda rebel. Does that really work, Greg? I don't get it. If they don't hate us because of our freedoms. If they hated people for freedoms, they would be attacking New Zealand. So or Canada. I mean, they hate us because of our foreign policy meddling everywhere, continually, constant. And the same thing goes back to the election. Let's drag that in here. This idea that Russia stole the election for the United States, I mean, good grief. It's more likely that Afghanistan or someone was trying to help, not Afghanistan, Ukraine was trying to help, Hillary. And so we act as if this is all one-sided and everyone's up in arms. It's absurd, Greg. We're on the biggest witch hunt here over Russia. I think we ought to be talking with Russia. I think we ought to end Russian sanctions. But President Trump was almost forced to sign the sanction bill simply because Congress would have overridden it. This is a very, very curious thing here. The two people in the Senate that voted against this sanction bill, Rand Paul and Bernie Sanders. Not an amazing combination.
Could we get a lot of people are very confident and calm that, they're not going to have any war. We're going to keep a lid on all that. If we have any kind of war with all the derivatives and the debt and the huge leverage in the world, could that blow the economy sky high? I mean, aren't we going to get, if we get some kind of a nuke going off, or heaven forbid, some suitcase nuke or some big terror attack that knocks out all the power on the East Coast or whatever, couldn't that just completely kibosh this Goldilocks economy?
It certainly could, but more likely it's just going to be something simple, like the Italian banking system collapsing. We've got a case here. There's a trillion euros, of non-performing loans in Europe. And about a quarter of them or so are in Italy. another 15% or so in Greece, and another 15% in Spain. The entire European banking system is insolvent. It's being propped up by QE from Mario Draghi. So you got Target 2 imbalances. This is country to country funding that's owed to each other. Germany's owed something like 800 billion euros from peripheral Europe. How are these countries ever going to pay that back to Germany? It's not going to happen. We're guessing where this thing's going to blow sky high. It can be anything. It can be Italian banking. It can be a political leader. It can be the election of Beppe Grillo in Italy, who decides to take Italy out of the Eurozone. So any number of things. A trade war can do it. Look at the negotiations regarding Brexit. It's clear that France and Germany in particular want to punish the UK just for leaving. It's like a high school gang. You can join it, but you can never leave because they'll kill you if you do. This is what we're talking about here. So a global trade war can do it. And speaking of trade wars, again, I'm a free trader. I hope you are. So this is one area in which I strongly disagree with President Trump on is a protectionist trade. He's got it in with Mexico, with Canada, with Germany, with China. A trade war can start this whole ball rolling. And of course, the Chinese banking system is insolvent as well. Its rate of growth is nothing more than unsound debt by state-owned enterprises, building buildings that barely last long enough to tear down and replace. Anywhere. This thing can start anywhere, Greg. Anywhere.
Well, I think it's your hope that it kind of just muddles along. But what you just went on, a parade of this could happen, Italian banks, trade war, China, some kind of a real war, North Korea. I mean, any one of these, is the economy so weak that any big choking hiccup could just send it into the toilet?
If the economy wasn't so weak that any big hiccup could send it into the toilet, then why does the ECB still have all this QE? Why are we so slow at tapering? Why are interest rates so low, not just in the United States, but Europe, but Canada, Australia, and Japan? Why do we still have negative interest rates? These things are actually counterproductive, but they're things that central banks are trying to do, actually doing, that are counterproductive, that are making matters worse. They've blown another equity bubble. They've blown a junk bond bubble. Just the collapse of them alone, for any reason, it doesn't matter what the reason is. Like any one of these things can send this whole thing, as you say, down the toilet in a hurry.
Mish, I'm going to cut it off there, but I'm going to try to get you to come back sooner than later. I loved having you on. You're a prolific writer. I'll be watching your blog, mishtalk.com. You got to come back on. It's just a wonderful brain, great work. You also have your Mish photography. I probably got that wrong. Tell me about that on your site.
Yeah, I've got a photography website out there, mishmoments.com. And what I do is I get to travel a lot. One of the beauties of what I do is I can write my blog from anywhere. So from Iceland, for example, I did a whole series of pictures on Iceland. So all I need to do my job is internet connection. Through the beauty of internet, we're having this conversation right here today. So I get to travel, and rather than just posting a random picture from here or there, I'm actually exploring places in depth. And I explored Iceland in 16 days, did the entire ring around Iceland. I posted my itinerary where everyone could stay, what things cost, what problems people might have, how to get great pictures, photography tips. So rather than just, here's a pretty picture I took, it's where did I go? How did I get it? What can you see? What can you do there? I'm on my third place now here. It's actually local. I just started a series on the International Crane Foundation. It's in Baraboo, Wisconsin. A great place to visit if you're in the Midwest. They've got every crane species in the entire world, and they're acting. I'm an environmentalist, and they're acting to save. And it's not government funding that is doing any of this. They're acting on their own to help save cranes. I support the organization. I support organizations like that. We need more of it. So anyway, those are my two blogs, mishtalk.com for the economy, the stock market, interest rates, for discussions like we're having right now, and Mish Moments for some insights into photography.
Mike Shedlock, better known as Mish, M-I-S-H, Mish, M-I-S-H mishtalk.com. Mike, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. We'll have you back on again for sure, my friend. Thanks for coming on.
Pleasure to be on, Greg, and I look forward to coming back. So many things to talk about. I mentioned about 15 things where it can blow up, so let's come back on.
Okay.